All right, guys, I have a question from Devin Brines, who's in the comment sections from time to time, and I'll make another video on for requests specifically, so you guys can put in the comment section like requests. 'Cause I've been seeing that um, there's regular people. There's regular people in the comments, and I appreciate that. So this one's on what's the difference between extroverted thinking and introverted thinking for myself personally. So if you were to go by the John Beebe model, or the eight function model, for extroverted thinking and introverted thinking for someone of my psychological type, quote unquote, if you want to approach it that way, it should be that extroverted thinking is an area of fostering and protecting for me, nurtures and protects others, and then for introverted thinking should be an area of the Senex, or area of limit setting and control, defends by refusing, belittling, and activating, and sets limits. So I don't know, we'll see how well this fits to reality. So I would say, for an example, I took this example problem that I made for students that I have. So basically, if I run it back all the way to the beginning, like, I like to stay current on a bunch of different theories, but in particular theories that I'm gonna encounter in practical situations. So it's not totally like I'm not like an NTP where I'll just like read stuff for no reason. Like, this is actually stuff that's relevant. So I was reading this book called Thermodynamics of Biochemical Reactions, and in chapter 5 there was a section on applying matrix algebra to chemical and biochemical thermodynamics, and I thought it was interesting. So I was reading through. So there's a lot of like basic stuff. So it's all based on the fact that the amounts of components in a closed system are not changed by chemical reactions, right? So basically you get a system of equations and you can manipulate them with linear algebra, right? So I started looking at this. I was like, oh, this is simple. It's simple stuff. It's not typically stuff you learn in a freshman general chemistry course, because the way they teach it is pretty old. So I was looking, I was like, is this something that I could teach my students? General chemistry students, like introductory freshman level chemistry students. And I was like, they might not have been exposed to matrix algebra. Like, they might not know what a transpose of a matrix is, for example. Like, some of them might not. So I was like, you know what, this looks easy enough, especially if I give them a calculator. Like, they might not know linear algebra, like they might not know how to do row reductions, for example, but they know how to solve systems of linear equations, because that's something that you do in like high school algebra. They just don't know the formalism. So I stopped it here. I was like, okay, they probably aren't going to know biochemistry. So let me find a way how I can teach this. But that's not like what I was looking at first. At first I was just reading through and doing my normal just checking to make sure that I understand what I'm talking about. So a couple months later, after reading that, I was like, okay, I stumbled upon this paper where there were some basic examples for calculating enthalpy of reactions by like linear algebra, basically, so by this matrix algebra method. And it's not too complicated, but this theoretical background section is something that I don't think my students would have been able to do, because they're ostensibly, most of them were like first year students, so they probably, and it was the first semester, so they probably were still taking calculus, so they probably hadn't gotten to linear algebra yet. Maybe some of them, but there was only one guy that was in computer science. The rest were like nursing and stuff like that, and like pre-medical. So I didn't expect them to know this, and I was like, I'm not gonna make them, but I was like, you know what? I could probably teach them this. They could learn it, because they know how to solve systems of equations, so they understand the basics. So what I did was, I just took all this theory here, and I condensed it, and I made it so that they could solve it with a calculator online. That automatically solved the system of linear equations, but to set it up was the confusing part for them, because they'd never seen anything like this. So basically, I replaced all of the things that were quote unquote theoretical that might confuse them. I replaced them with things they would probably understand. And in the end, they were able to get it. I mean, they had to ask me questions, and I had to make like a separate video for them explaining it, but they got it. And I taught them basic things like matrix, like very basic matrix multiplication, how how to set up a coefficient matrix and stuff like that. So it was really cool. Going back to the BB model, you could say, okay, well, maybe I use extroverted thinking to teach my students. Like, there's the introverted thinking of me understanding it to myself, but in order to get these ideas across to my students in a way that is not going to overwhelm them, you could say that, you know, maybe that works, you know, because they were able to do it. And I did teach students that were probably never exposed to more complicated mathematics, technically how to do complicated mathematics and apply it to a real situation instead of them just learning theory for no reason. In terms of introverted thinking and that being an area of limit setting, you could say, because I didn't learn this stuff initially for extroverted thinking reasons. It was literally just so I could, if somebody was wrong about something, I could correct them. Like, that's one of the main motivations for me to stay current. It's like, I want to be able to figure this stuff out for myself, and if somebody's telling me something that's bullshit, I want to be able to right then and there tell them why it's wrong, you know. So that could be, I don't know, I'll see what you guys think, but it could be Senex type stuff, but it's definitely introverted thinking, because I wasn't really reading that stuff for an extroverted thinking purpose. It was just like, I want to stay current on my theory, and I want to make sure that I can think about this stuff to myself. I don't it doesn't always have to be something that I'm directly working on. It doesn't have to be practical, but I do have to understand it.